Welcome to Chasing Hard podcast, where we talk about trusting God when life doesn't turn out the way you plan. If you're anything like a normal human, then you have not just one but several situations in your life that hasn't turned out the way you plan. Um, and let me just say, sort of like this podcast, because we've had a little bit of technical issues getting started here, and I'm a little flustered, but here we are, and I'm happy to welcome Bailey to the podcast. Bailey, here we are. Let's go.
Yes, yes. No, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be
Yeah.
fun.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. My name is Bailey and I live in Denver. I'm married. I have three kids and we absolutely love our city. We love our church. I work at our church part-time. I oversee our small group ministry, which I feel like feeds in so well to just my personal passion of loving community rhythms, loving female friendships,
Mm.
and it's been maybe like 7 years now that I've been able to share that with other women and um, yeah, it's been a blast. So yes, authored a book in 2022 called Together is a Beautiful Place and just continued to get to um, help women really like
Love that.
define where their season is and then be able to pursue friendships that work for them.
I do love that. I saw a few things about friendship, and one of the things that caught me, I think it was on one of your blog posts was, well, I made notes, reconciling a relationship, a friendship during betrayal or after betrayal or something.
Hmm.
Is that a personal experience, or I feel like I could talk like a long time about that particular subject. Is that something? Tell me about that. What does that consist of?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you are at least in your 20s by now, you've had a friendship that wasn't just a friendship that faded away, but maybe one that had, like, had conflict. And
Mm,
sometimes you re-enter into that friendship. Sometimes you don't ever continue that friendship again in the future. But I do believe that reconciliation is always a better option, whether you continue or not. I think the pain
mm,
of
mm.
conflict can be something that you can carry with you for your
Yes,
whole life.
yes.
And so to have the courage to have a conversation face to face and give the other person an opportunity to communicate, share, apologize,
Mm,
but really doing your part. Because if they're Christians, they're in the family of God, and that's
yeah.
someone you may have to still see in your church
Mm,
community or in your Bible study, and just the joy and peace that comes with having just come to almost a conclusion is so
mm.
much better than continuing that strain and stress of leaving things open ended and I don't know, leaving just your part open, as well as trying to give them an
Yeah.
opportunity as well to say their piece.
I like that. There are so many things that come to mind when you're discussing that. And one thing that is really difficult is when you are a Christian, when you are following after God in your relationships, and you want to work out some kind of a reconciliation or just a conclusion to this, something you can live with. And it's hard. Sometimes
Mm,
it's hard. Sometimes it seems almost harder if you are a Christian.
yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there are different um like just fruits of the spirit that we want to live by. And so when you aren't sowing seeds of gentleness and faithfulness and kindness, there is more of a tension there than maybe others who have no guilt or shame attached to their
Yeah.
friendship conflict.
Yeah, and perhaps we have more expectations, or greater
Mm,
expectations of a person who is a believer.
yeah.
And the disappointment is greater, I think,
Hmm.
when it doesn't play out the way you thought it would, or you thought it
Yeah.
should, or that you feel like is honoring God. But we only are responsible for our own part, and we only really get to make the decisions of what that looks like for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think um if anyone, as well as you say, like we make the decisions for ourselves,
Mm.
I think in friendship conflict, you just have to come back to the only person who really, really, truly understands, and that's Christ, who knows what
That's
it's
true.
like to be rejected or
Absolutely.
have people speak poorly of him or even have his own friends, like,
Oh, yeah,
let him down. And so
sure.
to be able to come and like reconcile your own emotions and experience with the Lord and
Mm.
then kind of get that, extra, I think that love that compels us then to do the hard things with people.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's interesting to me. And I'm a relatively new podcaster. I've only done 30 plus episodes and with mostly women. And
Hmm.
there have been a few themes that seem universal in all the women that I've talked with. One is infertility struggles, or even miscarriage, and another is friendships and whether it's betrayal or just gone bad and you can't reconcile it, and moving forward, like that's a really, really big issue, a really big deal, I
Yeah,
think.
I've been thinking a lot about what is probably the most important thing for adult women to be learning in their friendships in 2024. And I think
Hmm.
the healthiest thing is to be adaptable, and being able to, like, I'm almost honestly like reconcile your own beliefs that friendships just like are not meant to last forever. They are
Yeah.
more changeable than you think they are. And so I
Yeah.
think instead of just getting so stuck on like, this is it, these are my friends forever, or even the opposite, if you're like, I have no
Mm.
friends and it'll never change, I think just really being able to hold your friendships very loosely,
That's true.
understanding that they will ebb and flow, they may end and start. And I think the women who are able to adapt to those changes and are more open-minded, I think, to making new friends regularly,
Yeah.
to saying goodbye to friends regularly, like they're going to be the ones I think that I did not want to say survive. They're not going to survive, but I think that they're the ones that are going to just flourish in having
Yeah.
connections than those who then just are like, this friendship was disrupted and like now my life is like can't go on, or it can't,
Yeah.
this was it, this is all I had and it'll never be the same, or it'll never happen for me again. That's just not true. And so I think
Yeah.
that adaptability is going to be very important, especially I think in our city people move all the time,
Oh, I'm
like
sure.
all the
Denver for
time.
sure.
So
Yeah.
just really learning the skill of
Right.
having friends for a few years and then them moving away. So I think
Yeah.
there is always a longing for long-term relationships, but being more open-minded, I think, too.
Right.
Those short-term ones and really seeing the good for what they bring.
No, that's good. So many things that you said. That's very good. I work actually in a mega church, and so there's a lot of transition there and of
Hmm.
friendships that come and go. I love the word adaptable in relationships, because you have to be in all your relationships, but friendships, I think, is probably, it's even more important to be open, to know that they may not be forever. There's one friendship that I've had for, gosh, before I had kids, so 30 some odd years. And she we lived near each other, so we raised our kids together up until a certain point, and then she moved to Colorado. And now she lives in a different state, still not the same state as me, but we have a relationship. After our kids were grown, I think we came back together. And so we have a long distance relationship where we make time to talk to each other like every other week on the phone. Um, it's different. It's weird. It's not how I imagined. It's not what I really wanted. Like,
Hmm.
I want a bestie that lives close to me, but it
Hmm.
still works and it's still good. And so
Yeah.
being adaptable and allowing the good things from friendships, I think that's important and very wise.
Absolutely.
So I saw one of your blog posts was entitled "The People You Can't Afford to Live Without in the New Year." What's that
Yes.
about?
Yeah, I mean, there's just enough studies that have shown that regular connection is so vital for everything,
Mm.
for your emotional health, your physical
Yeah.
health, your spiritual health. And so continuing to make friendships a priority. I think when you look at your list of things you have to do, there's things like I need to go to the gym. I need to meal prep for my family. I need to get childcare. I need to prep for my meetings this week. There's a lot of things I think seem very obvious, and
Mm,
you maybe miss that I really need to make sure these are the times I am setting aside for phone calls with friends that live long distance, or for meeting in person with friends, for having a dinner
right.
out with just me and a friend where my husband stays home with the kids. And so
Mhm.
including that in your schedule, it seems like that's the superfluous thing. That's like, oh, if I can, then I'll do
Right,
that.
right. Yeah,
But I think that we're just seeing more and more that it needs to be at the top of the list, for you
right.
to continue in health. And it's interesting. There's even some studies that have come out that the needle, even if you're married, like the needle of your emotional health, like it isn't moved in marriage, but
Mm,
having a same-sex friend actually does move that needle for you. And so even though I value my husband and he
right,
brings a piece of friendship to my life, he
right.
is not, he's not a friend that can meet all of my
Yeah,
relational
that's
needs. And
good.
so being able to say, like, yes, even if you're married, like I still actually need to spend time with other people,
Yes,
because those connections are just, yeah, they're important and
for sure.
necessary.
They are. And I think like the younger generation, like you and I aren't of the same generation. And I think you guys get that better than we did. Like you married your best friend and you did everything together.
Mhm.
And it wasn't as important to cultivate outside relationships like family. It
Mhm.
was all about family, and it is, and that's very
Mhm.
important, and so is the marriage relationship. But I think the younger generation is way wiser about those things
Mhm.
than we were. And also along those lines, your kids grow up and they move away, and you'll have extra time, not you,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so what you're saying is very important to just to be able to have like you're not scrambling around when your nest is empty trying to build
Mhm.
relationships because you didn't take the time to cultivate them all the
Totally.
while. Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so anything else that you want to talk about that was a that's a a trusting God in a hard situation. um
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that people are often surprised by how difficult friendship is. And instead of being caught off guard, and so I think about even my own friendship struggles. I feel like the times that they were the most difficult were the times that I, like you mentioned earlier, was just completely thrown off, where I was like, oh my gosh, my expectations were here, and that is exactly like what did not happen.
right.
And instead really have a plan. And so I think for me, and specifically what the way the Lord has gifted me and how I pursue my ministry of friendship, is to create things that are very tangible. Whether that's asking the right questions to get you to identify what friendship means for you in your season, writing
Mm,
out a list of people's names, and kind of picking two. Like it feels very, sometimes I feel like it can feel inauthentic or inorganic, but I just feel like you're not going to get there if you don't get intentional about
yeah,
it.
that's what
So
I was thinking. You have to be intentional.
yes. And so I would just say, as even just like a closing thought, of
Hmm.
really sitting down and, yeah, writing out a few things, writing out a list of, hey, who's in my circle right now?
Good.
Who's on the periphery of my circle right now? Who in my circle is starting to kind of drift away? And by the way, again, I feel like these terms feel very harsh, but what I mean drift away, like I have some sweet neighbor friends.
Yeah.
We were attached at the hip when our kiddos were little, and now they're getting into different elementary schools. So we have
Hmm.
different
Hmm.
communities we're trying to connect with. And so now we just like see each other on the sidewalk and we're like, hi, like miss you. So I would say
Yeah.
that was someone who was in an inner circle that's becoming on the periphery. So
Yeah,
who can I, like, from the periphery bring into my inner circle? And so you're kind of
that's cool.
constantly identifying, where am I spending my time? Who am I initiating with? Who am I like trying to really grow with? And I just, again, I don't think you're going to make that happen. And then later, let's say 2, 3 years from now, you're like, oh, all my friends are gone. Well, how did
Yeah.
that happen?
Yes, I
So
agree.
make a
Yeah.
plan, and
Who knew?
something. I do maybe once a year. I used to do it twice a year, but
Okay.
now about once a year, I'm kind of like going back and my husband and I are saying, okay, like where are we at? What are our limits? Where are our freedoms? How do we invite people into those freedoms? How do
Mhm.
we address our limits? Is it something we can actually change and shift to better serve our relationships? Or is this just our reality? Instead of
Mhm.
like pushing back against it or being resentful of it, being like, okay, that doesn't work. We can't do this with our friends anymore. After
Mhm.
church brunch, that's not an option for us. Our kids need to go take a nap. So it's like,
Right.
all right, then
Yeah,
where else can we move things around?
that's good.
And so that's just, yeah, a lasting encouragement is to really get a piece of paper out, write it down with a pen, take 10-15 minutes, even if you did it, yeah, once or twice a
That's
year.
good.
But I think that leaves you less surprised, more planned, and hopefully you're finding then the fruit that you're putting, or sorry, the energy you're putting into your friendships, like you'll begin to see fruit
The
from it
fruit. Yeah.
versus just, I think of like throwing your seeds on the grass and being like, I hope that text, starts something. I hope if I join this
Mm.
book club, that'll do something. Maybe if I ask this, mom at the school, something will happen. So instead of like scattering them without really like sowing the soil, digging the dirt,
Mm. That's good.
watering it regularly, really like tending to those relationships.
Love it.
Yeah, I just
I
think you're
love
going to find
that.
a
I
lot
mean, that
more.
is, I love the intentionality, the making a plan. Like that's good. Good words. So can you tell us again the name of your book?
Yes, yeah. So the book is Together is a Beautiful Place. Finding, keeping, and loving our friends. I think it's great for anyone who feels like they're in a transition season. So if you're in a transition to a new city, maybe you're transitioning out of college, maybe you're transitioning into motherhood or out of the baby season.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's a great way to kind of come
That's
back
good.
and say, what are my foundations of friendship? How do I apply that with scripture? And then what are some strategies to help me move forward and really gain some traction?
Wow.
One of my favorite things is I got to include some friend date ideas. And that's just like my little, I don't know, community hostess self coming out. And so I think it's a fun book. I say the
Yeah.
tone is very cheerleader
Yeah.
rah-rah.
That's good.
So it's a great book if you're needing a little, kick in the pants of
I
like,
like
it's
it.
time. I need to be a better friend.
Yeah, that's great. Well,
Hmm.
thank you for being a guest. I appreciate your flexibility because I know we had to move things
Yes.
around a few times, and I can't wait to read your book. It sounds very helpful, like very intentional and very helpful when it comes to friendship. So thanks again,
Mhm.
Bailey.
Yeah, thanks, Lori.
All right. I'll be back next week, and I hope you are too. See you then. Bye.